Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A new partnership is being formed between Alberta Health Services and the RCMP to help those suffering from mental health. The country of Lebanon is in economic crisis and a prime target for the terrorist group Hezbollah, says our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who will have details. And billionaire Jeff Bezos takes a few of his friends up into space for the ride of a lifetime. We will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The province announced more funding to improve mental health services for Alberta's youth. Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions Mike Ellis was joined by Children's Services Minister Rebecca Schultz in Medicine Hat earlier on Tuesday to announce $7.3 million over 3 years to expand mental health hubs across Alberta.
We're planning on having 12 hubs provincially, 8 hubs currently in operation. 4 hubs are being planned and implemented as we speak. Of the $7.3 million in funding, almost $3 million is allocated this year to improve mental wellness immediately. These hubs provide a one-stop shop where youth enter one door instead of many doors and access a wide range of services.
These youth hubs are absolute game changers for young people in need and making sure that they have access to safe, confidential, integrated mental health supports and services. I know this work has been in progress by many of you for many years, but it is even more vital right now as we come out of the pandemic. The need for these services for young people is something we've been hearing a lot about in the Child and Youth Wellbeing Review and the engagements that we have been undertaking right across the province.
A new partnership between Alberta's RCMP regional crisis teams and Alberta Health Services has been created to help deal and treat people who are suffering from mental health when arriving at a call. As Carson Marsouk reports, the new initiative has already begun successfully in the northern part of the province.
A new initiative to provide the right care for someone suffering with mental health has been launched by the Alberta RCMP in partnership with Alberta Health Services. When responding to a call, an officer with the crisis team will be partnered up with a mental health therapist from AHS who will respond to calls across Alberta.
The vast majority of the mental health apprehensions are people who actually need to be in hospital and will be kept for treatment. Whereas as police officers, we're not always able to judge that, and sometimes we would err on the side of caution.
Staff Sergeant with the Alberta RCMP Community Policing Unit, Colette Zazalak, says over the past few years they have seen an increase in people suffering from mental health issues and are hoping the new initiative will provide better care when officers are responding to a call.
Unfortunately, we have, and this was even increasing prior to COVID, and then of course with COVID, everyone isolated, and it just kind of exacerbated some underlying issues for people.
According to the Canadian Mental Health Association, in any given year, 1 in 5 people in Canada will experience a mental health problem. In 2020, there were over 20,000 files with the Alberta RCMP relating to mental health. Zazalak says they are hoping to keep the new program for as long as possible.
No intention of them leaving. They relieve a lot of the burden both on the frontline responding members and the hospital emergency departments.
The initiative is a 3-year implementation plan that has started in northern Alberta and is expected to make its way to southern Alberta in roughly 2 years. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marsouk.
Alberta Health says it has now administered 5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine across the province. Close to 75% of eligible Albertans have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine, and close to 60% are fully immunized. Alberta reported just 130 new cases of the virus from Friday through Sunday. There are just 100 people in hospital with COVID-19, including 27 in intensive care. Federal government officials say mixing and matching vaccines will not be a problem when it comes to crossing borders in the months ahead. Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc says data sharing and conversations between health authorities will lead to a shift away from some countries' reluctance to accept the approach.
The ongoing conversations between Health Canada regulatory authorities and people like Dr. New and Dr. Tam with their counterparts will, we believe, over time lead to an evolution and an adjustment of some of these measures. They're obviously bilateral but multilateral conversations taking place between Canada and other countries and organizations like the World Health Organization. So we don't expect this to be a static circumstance. And I think over the next number of weeks and months, there may be revisions provided by health authorities around the world with respect to these vaccine regimes.
Streets Alive is a Christian organization here in Lethbridge which has been helping our homeless and those with serious addiction issues turn their lives around. The group's co-founder, Ken Kissick, explains how the ministry incorporates Christ into a wide range of their programs.
We are faith-based, so a lot of our programming and direction has the biblical worldview edge to it. That people can enter. Faith is not an issue for entry. Most of them, however, when they leave, are people of faith. Because without Christ, we are unable to really totally recover. And it's been really exciting to watch men and women, when they let Christ in, actually move forward in huge leaps.
Ken Kissick will discuss some unique ways they're reaching our city's homeless coming up in the second half of our newscast. The poor air quality much of Alberta has seen recently due to the ongoing wildfires not only impacts you and I, but also our pets. Veterinarian Ryan Moore at Ranch Docks in Lethbridge says it's best to limit their time outdoors and watch for symptoms caused by the smoky air.
Healthy animals should be okay for mild amounts of exercise. You still want to get them outdoors and moving, and obviously taking them out for bathroom breaks, but you'll also want to be careful because they will be more susceptible to developing those conditions or just developing fatigue and other problems as a result of having the poor air quality. So early morning and late evening, I would say, are the best times, and then the ones that have chronic underlying conditions you want to be particularly careful with. If you have any concerns, or if you have symptoms such as coughing, heavy breathing, panting, things like that, then you would want to consult a veterinarian.
Moore says to keep your pets safe, you should always keep them indoors when the air quality is high risk. Use air conditioning to filter the air, ensure they're well hydrated, and avoid taking your pet out for long walks. Lethbridge baseball players are set to receive some much-needed training. A new baseball academy for high school players is ready to roll. As Micah Quinn explains now, the academy will allow players from Lethbridge and southern Alberta to finally test their skills again on the ball diamond.
Starting September at Spitz Stadium, high school students will start playing for the Lethbridge High School Baseball Academy.
They play their summer ball, but kind of the year-round reps has been lacking.
Wheatley says kids are rearing to get going and play some ball at the high school level, especially after the pandemic.
And yeah, we plan on running like a high performance academy, kind of along the lines of Okotoks and Vauxhall.
For high school baseball players in Lethbridge, there hasn't been any kind of academy they can tap into, and this program rectifies the problem.
We kind of don't really have anything in place right now for the high school kids, so they don't have to leave town to get this experience. So we're looking to compete with the best possible competition we can in the province. So we're kind of looking for players who are experienced, but if they're new and they got some skills, we'll take a look for sure.
The academy will run until the end of the school year for all high school baseball players. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Bookworms in Waterton have a new way of accessing their favorite reading materials. A micro-library was recently installed, and all you need is a valid Chinook Arch Regional Library card to access the books. Leslie Little, who is a board member for Chinook Arch, says this is a great option for residents in Waterton.
We don't have space for a library. We don't have staffing for a library. And most of the community is summertime. So in the winter, there really wouldn't be anyone to manage a library, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't need the services of a library. So the book locker seemed to address all those issues. And the Waterton Park Community Association gave us a space in the building where the post office is, and on the other end of the building, and they renovated the space. We already have local broadband access, fiber optics, so we're ready to go.
The micro-library will receive new shipments of books each week to ensure items are restocked regularly. The federal government has given its approval to a reservoir that could protect Calgary from future flooding. Alberta Transportation proposed the $432 million off-stream reservoir near the rural community of Springbank, which is west and upstream of Calgary. The project, which would divert water from the Elbow River, was proposed after extensive flooding in Calgary back in 2013. Officials at the Calgary Stampede say in total they welcome more than 500,000 people through its gates this month. Organizers said they expected overall numbers to be down significantly for the July 9th through 18th event. In total, just under 529,000 attended the greatest outdoor show on earth. That is down significantly, however, from the almost 1.3 million who attended in 2019. Organizers thank Calgarians who made up 75% of the attendees. Lethbridge has its own summer festival coming up the beginning of September. Whoop Up Days will run September 2nd through the 5th. Now, our poll question is, are you planning on attending Whoop Up Days in September? Make sure you visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca, and let us know your thoughts. We'll add up the results and have them for you at the end of the month. Officials at Edmonton International Airport are applauding Transport Canada's decision to lift travel border restrictions as of August 9th at 5 Canadian airports, including Edmonton and Winnipeg. President and CEO Tom Ruth says Edmonton has the testing and safety protocols in place at the airport to safely support arriving and departing travelers. International flights have been restricted to Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal last February when Canada tightened travel restrictions. The BC government says it will fast-track funding to the 21 caretaker First Nation communities where there were residential schools or former hospitals. The government also appointed 2 First Nations liaisons to support caretaker communities as the search for more remains continues. One of them is Charlene Bello, who is a former chairwoman of the Aboriginal Healing Foundation.
My own great-grandfather committed suicide at St. Joseph's Mission Residential School. They buried him there without telling our family. This was during a period of time when flogging was at its worst. They strung our children on poles and lashed them until they passed out. I look forward to finding my great-grandfather so that we can have closure.
Weather has been affecting the BC Wildfire Service's ability to knock down blazes. The service said it had to postpone plans for a controlled burn near a 604-hectare wildfire burning west of Sun Peaks because of smoky skies were limiting helicopter safety. Clear skies allowed for a controlled burn, however, in the Sparks Lake area by Kamloops, where a 450 square kilometer fire is burning. Environment Canada issued special air quality statements for many parts of Western Canada due to wildfires burning in both BC and Ontario. The monstrous Bootleg fire in Oregon continues to spread each and every day. The blaze, which stretches over 500 square kilometers southeast of Portland so far, has destroyed 70 homes and more than 100 other buildings. Fortunately, crews have begun to build containment lines on the blaze that has now grown to over 1,200 square kilometers. The Bootleg fire is one of many wildfires burning in a dozen U.S. states, mostly in the West. Lebanon is going through one of the worst economic depressions in its modern history. More than 50% of the country's population now lives in poverty, and the Lebanese currency has plummeted by 90%. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says what's most scary for those in Lebanon is how Hezbollah is slowly taking over while the country is in chaos.
In Lebanon specifically, there has been a political vacuum. The country has been leaderless for a very long time, and as we saw protests on the streets there, they are about the economic downward spiral that they're experiencing, but it's also about the chaos. It's about the lack of leadership. It's about the fact that Hezbollah, a proxy of the Iranian regime, a terror organization, has run rampant there. It's a cancerous element within their society, and they can't rid themselves of this cancerous element.
Lisa will also discuss how the Taliban is making inroads in Afghanistan now that American troops are pulling out. That Q&A is coming up after business news. Jeff Bezos blasted into space on his rocket company's first flight with passengers on the 52nd anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. The Amazon founder was accompanied by a hand-picked group, including his brother, an 18-year-old from the Netherlands, and an 82-year-old aviation pioneer from Texas. They were the youngest and oldest to ever fly in space. Blue Origin reached an altitude of about 106 kilometers, more than 16 kilometers higher than Richard Branson's July 11th ride. The 18-meter booster accelerated to Mach 3, or 3 times the speed of sound, to get the capsule high enough. The Blue Origin capsule then landed 10 minutes later on the desert floor in West Texas. That would have been a very cool experience. You know, I'm glad we had a chance to experience more moisture lately. Thanks to the rain, the air quality in southwestern Alberta has improved dramatically. We're at low to moderate risk right now, and there's a chance of even more rain on Wednesday. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. It was so nice to see some rain here in Lethbridge. Our crops need it. The air quality is so much better. It's good news all around. Jeanette Rocher is back with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, the showers may be sticking around, but sadly not for very long.
Yeah, well, that is true. We could see another 30% chance of showers tomorrow with a risk of a thunderstorm as well. It should continue to be a bit hazy. We are going to see a high humidex as well. So we've got that humidity in the air for sure, and a 30-kilometer-per-hour wind tomorrow, gusting to 50K at times. 26, though, the high. And then into Thursday, we're seeing temperatures rise into the high 20s. They're forecasting that it's going to be sunny and warm, although, you know, with the smoke, it's so hard to tell. Medicine Hat, by the way, was the hot spot in Canada earlier today. Just thought I'd mention that, at 29 degrees. So that's kind of interesting. We're looking at 28 for Thursday, 29 for Friday, 27 Saturday, and then on the weekend, a beautiful 28 and 29 degrees on Sunday, and then into Monday, 29 degrees there on Monday. Lots of sunshine, so let's keep our fingers crossed that smoke will move on out of there. 26 is our average high for this time of year. 11 degrees is the average low. 35 was our high temperature in 2003. And back in 1977, we had our chilliest. That is a very chilly July day, I would say, with only 3 degrees. 5:46 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun set this evening, 9:29 p.m. So just a little under 16 hours of daylight. Looking to the west coast tomorrow, sunshine in Victoria, 22 degrees is the high, a little bit cooler by the water, of course. 22 in Vancouver, mix of sun and cloud. 23 in Edmonton and 25 in Calgary, both of those cities, mix of sun and cloud, and a bit hazy there as well, as most of Edmonton, or most of Alberta rather, is still dealing with that poor air quality. There is an air quality statement in effect for Regina as well. They're going to be expecting widespread smoke tomorrow. 26 degrees the high there. 25 in Saskatoon with a mix of sun and cloud. 30% chance of showers tomorrow in Winnipeg with a high of 24. They're also dealing with that widespread smoke as well. Toronto looking at showers tomorrow, high of 25, 24 in Ottawa. Both of these cities looking at severe thunderstorm watches tonight into tomorrow, just looking at a chance of showers. 21 tomorrow in Montreal, also with a chance of showers there. Looking at lots of rain activity happening for the rest of the East Coast here. 18 degrees the high in Fredericton tomorrow. Risk of a thunderstorm there. Halifax, chance of rain, 24 the high. Looking at some showers tomorrow in Charlottetown as well, 21 degrees the high there, and 23 in St. John's, Newfoundland, also looking at some showers tomorrow. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you by Jeff Reimer of Royal LePage South Country Real Estates, 403-380-1779.
Premier Jason Kenney is calling a partnership between a BC First Nation and a Calgary-based group of companies on a new liquefied natural gas project fantastic news. Kenney says the proposed Slissims LNG project in northern BC will create a huge economic opportunity for First Nations, along with thousands of jobs. The plan is to export the liquefied natural gas to Asia. Kenney says that would reduce global carbon emissions by shifting Asia from thermal coal to clean Canadian gas power generation. Air Canada is adding dozens of routes to the U.S. as part of its summer schedule, with the change coming after Ottawa loosened border restrictions. The airline says the 55 routes to 34 destinations will add up to 220 daily Air Canada flights between the two countries. Fully vaccinated U.S. citizens and permanent residents will be able to enter Canada with relaxed testing measures and without mandatory hotel quarantines as of August the 9th. The additional flights are at airports in Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. Coca-Cola announced that it is refreshing Coke Zero by rolling out a new recipe and look. Some customers on social media are quite concerned, however, and some are outraged. This Coke relaunch is similar to what some would describe as the most memorable marketing blunders ever when in 1985 the company introduced the new Coke. Coke drinkers were upset that the company changed its long-standing formula. Officials then launched Coke Classic to bring back the flavor to appease many of the traditionalists. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Many of the markets were up today. The TSX was up 216 points to 19,943. The Dow was up 549 points to 34,512. The S&P 500 was up 64 points to 4323, and the Nasdaq was up 223 points to 14,499. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1 to 67.42 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 10 cents to 3.88 US. Gold was down a cent to 18.1035 US an ounce, and silver was even at 24.94 US an ounce. Wheat is at $412 per metric ton, barley's at $408, canola's at $906, and corn is at $435 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 48 cents to $119.78, feeder cattle were down $1.85 to $155.53, and lean hogs were up 53 cents to $105. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.87 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta Health says it has now administered 5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine across the province. Close to 75% of eligible Albertans have received at least one dose of vaccine, and close to 60% are fully immunized. Alberta reported just 130 new cases of the virus from Friday through Sunday. There are just 100 people in hospital with COVID-19, including 27 in intensive care. Many people believe as U.S. troops pull out of Afghanistan that the country will fall back into the hands of the Taliban. You can include our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari in that group. She will have more details as to why we should be concerned in just a moment. The head of the Taliban says he's committed to ending the decades-old war in Afghanistan, even as insurgents battle in dozens of districts across the country to gain territory. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the statement came as Taliban leaders were meeting with high-level Afghan government delegation in Qatar to jumpstart stalled peace talks. Tell me more.
Yeah. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde, right? The Taliban, they are very much agreeable to all kinds of ceasefires and deals, and will come to the negotiating table with the United States and with the Afghan government. But their other hand is in terrorism and in suicide bombings and blowing up places where Afghan civilians live. So, how can we trust them as a partner to take Afghanistan into the future, to help them nation build, to help them out of this turmoil that they've been in for decades and decades? It's a really sad situation. And the unfortunate part is, the question begs, right? Why are we dealing with the Taliban? Why do the Afghans deal with the Taliban if this is the partner that they're showing themselves to be? Well, the answer is that they are the only game in town, and their influence is so tremendously significant that they have to deal with them, because if they don't deal with them, there will still be this enemy within the state of Afghanistan. So, it's a catch-22. It's a situation that the Afghan government finds themselves in, and the United States did as well. We saw them as a legitimate partner, and of course, they are a terrorist organization. So we see this back and forth, for a long time now, and we'll see if they ultimately come up with some sort of semblance of peace for the future.
A few political pundits looked at the Afghan government as basically being a puppet regime under the Taliban once the U.S. troops completely pull out. What are you hearing?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. We don't even have to wait for the U.S. to pull out. When the announcement was made that the U.S. and the European allies were going to pull out, that gave the Taliban free rein. Look, they saw it as free rein before the fact, but now it's even, a much, much more free hand for them to really exercise all kinds of terrorism and to have the influence on all sectors of life. And as you said, the Afghan government serving as just a figurehead and nothing more for the government there.
Lisa, Lebanon is going through one of its worst economic depressions in modern-day history. More than half of the country's population now lives in poverty, and the Lebanese currency has dropped 90%. Fuel shortages have even led to fights at gas stations, And the Middle Eastern state is on the brink of a social explosion. Now, speaking of terrorist organizations, Hezbollah stands to gain the most during these tumultuous times, don't they?
Yep, absolutely. So all throughout the Middle East and elsewhere, whenever we see some sort of collapse, and it's usually economic, right? We always look at the vacuum, the power vacuum that will be created once there is this kind of turmoil. And in Lebanon specifically, there has been a political vacuum. The country has been leaderless for a very long time, and as we saw protests on the streets there, they are about the economic downward spiral that they're experiencing, but it's also about the chaos. It's about the lack of leadership. It's about the fact that Hezbollah, a proxy of the Iranian regime, a terror organization, has run rampant there. It's a cancerous element within their society, and they can't rid themselves of this cancerous element. So experts are warning now that Lebanon is at this crucial point. The only person, or the only, I should say, the only group that has to gain is Hezbollah and its leaders, and they will, for a fact, take advantage of this political upheaval and try to exert themselves on all sectors of society. This is where, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, this is where they come in. The Taliban also, as we just talked about, this is where they come in and they put up the soup kitchens and they pay for people's education. And that's where they indoctrinate, and that's where they radicalize, and that's where they take over segments of the population. This is how radicalization happens. So that's why there is this stern warning for the future of Lebanon.
Now, when it comes to Iran, their goal is to silence us or intimidate us. Those are your words, Lisa. You say the Iranian regime is not afraid to go after North American citizens to really prove their point, including a recent plot to kidnap a New York-based Iranian-American journalist.
Yes, this conversation comes to light because of this recent plot. But as you know, Hal, in Canada and the United States, all over Europe, there have been previous plots, whether foiled or actually carried through, where the Iranian regime sends its bullies that it finds on the ground. It pays these thugs to do its dirty work here in North America. This is a stern wake-up call. Journalists like myself who have been covering the region for a very long time, we have faced hacking and threats and intimidation of all sorts in order to silence us, in order for us not to expose their heinous crimes, whether it's in human rights or support of terror or its continuation of its nuclear program. So, let this plot be a wake-up call to all of us here in North America. We have a mini Iran at our southern border in Venezuela and in Bolivia and Brazil and Argentina, all throughout South America, Venezuela being its biggest headquarters. But, Iran is not the bully that's far, far away. It's actually closer than we think. When they're able to find and hire investigators and others to do their dirty work and come after citizens of North America, then we have a lot of waking up to do to really understand what this threat is.
Violence continues during a second night of protests over severe water shortages in southwestern Iran, including a man who was killed. Lisa, a government official, however, says the death was just an accident.
Yeah, that's what they always say, right? The death toll now is reportedly higher than that. And again, Hal, you know that we don't have any way of properly verifying this. This is through citizen reports, civilian reports, and the government will deny, and the media there is state-controlled media, so it's very difficult to get a proper gauge. In 2019, they had very serious protests, and they said that a couple hundred protesters were killed, when in fact we know that number is 1,500 or higher. So in this case, look, when they start to crack down in a violent way, they're cracking down because they want this to stop. They know that it starts out as a water protest, but it continues on with all the disenchantment and all the grievances that people have about the government as a whole. We start out with slogans saying we need water, and it turns out to be, death to the dictator. So, it evolves very quickly because the people only come out when they are so fully disenchanted that they're willing to risk their lives. They're willing to lose their jobs or lose their place in university to go out and protest. And that's what we're seeing. I thank you for bringing this up. I know a lot of media outlets aren't covering these protests, but they're incredibly significant, and more so significant because the Western world is busy and focused on striking a deal with the Iranian regime where you see the Iranian citizens in the country of Iran and what they're dealing with and these human rights abuses, and none of this is brought to light. None of the dots are connected to say, what are we doing at the negotiating table with such an unworthy partner? And I think we should really be underscoring a lot of these other stories.
Now, still with Iran, the country's deputy foreign minister in a recent tweet accused the U.S. and British governments of holding a proposed prisoner swap hostage over negotiations for the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. A spokesperson with the U.S. State Department slammed Iran, calling the claim outrageous.
You know how, let's say this claim were to be true. Look, they have every right to hold anything they want until they get some sort of deal, meaning we don't have to deal with you. We don't have to do a prisoner swap. We don't have to release the sanctions, and we don't have to sit at the negotiating table with you. I think the Iranian regime has read into a very, very gullible partner in the White House. Of course, that's because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaigned on the fact that they're going to make nice and appease the Iranian regime, but think they've gone a little overboard. They are chest thumping to the extent where even the State Department and the White House here in the United States have taken a step back to say, we're not going to deal with you until X, Y, and Z. And of course, the Iranian regime is not backing down. You know, the juxtaposition that I always make is, look, in 2005, under President Obama, we had an Iran nuclear deal, and it was not a good deal. But what we did have was at least an Iranian regime that pretended that it cared about being more moderate, about human rights, about making some sort of behavioral change. Now that's all out the window. You have a rogue Iranian regime who is so brazen and so confident in really sticking it to the Americans and everyone else at the negotiating table in Vienna to say, we're the ones who are going to call the shots because you guys want this deal so badly. So they'll have to wait for the prisoner exchange. They'll have to wait for the sanctions to be removed, hopefully, because we're hearing some reports out of the White House that they may be removed sometime soon. But we hope to see some sort of change and a change in rhetoric more so than anything else, and hopefully behavior out of Iran.
Lisa, Cuban Americans, especially in Florida, are showing support for Cuba's fight for freedom. Many are speaking out against the Castro regime, which is leaving people poor, hungry, and frustrated by lack of jobs.
Right. Listen to them. Listen to the Cuban Americans and listen to the Cubans in Cuba telling us their story. Don't listen to AOC. Don't listen to these socialist sympathizers who wouldn't last a day in a place like Cuba. If you go on Twitter, it kind of, it ages you because you're listening to all of this, these tweets that are, sent by people who are just sitting comfortably in their homes in the United States. Or elsewhere, I should say. This is a more of a Western Hemisphere issue, and just saying, that they're socialists. It's the best thing in the world. There was a tweet last night that said the best government in the world is a socialist government. Well, ask the socialists, and that's what it comes down to. Ask the people in Miami who are from Cuba, who fled that government. Ask people who came to the United States and Canada and elsewhere for a better life. When you look at the realities on the ground there, and then you look at so many of the lawmakers in this country that are so tone deaf about the freedoms, I think the bottom line here is that the protesters in Cuba, many of them are holding American flags. And that says a lot. It says the America still to them is the symbol of freedom and liberty. And we should remember that.
The land flowing with milk and honey. Lisa, oil-producing nations have agreed to increase their output with the aim of reducing prices and easing the pressure on the world economy. The OPEC cartel and partners, including Russia, will boost supply in August after prices climbed to a 2.5-year high during the pandemic. I mean, we saw the price of Brent crude go up 43% this year to around $74 US per barrel. It has since come down quite a bit.
Yes, a much needed correction. Obviously, ask people here who go to the pump and have SUVs what they're paying to fill up their cars. This is obviously in the aftermath of the pandemic. We're talking, supply and demand, and now, trying to ease this. Again, this is summertime. A lot of people taking road trips. A lot of people really feeling the pinch at the pump. And as you said, we're up to 70 some dollars a barrel, and hopefully, if it comes down, we'll see some relief at the pump as well.
Yeah, so far it's coming down about $8 or $9 US per barrel. Lisa, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad took the oath of office for a fourth consecutive term in war-ravaged Syria. He won around 95% of the vote in an election that was dismissed around the world. And shortly before the ceremony, rockets fired by pro-government forces killed 6 people, including 3 children, in the country's last major rebel bastion.
Oh my goodness. You can't believe any of the news that comes out of Syria, unfortunately, because it is just a Bashar al-Assad, mouthpiece that just, props him, his regime, and of course the Iranian regime that stands behind it and the Russians who stand behind it. There's so many different layers here in Syria. And if you believe that he won with a 95% win, I have a bridge to sell you, as they say. So, a lot of propaganda, they don't, it's funny because people don't believe them anymore. Obviously, if you're going to, proclaim yourself a leader for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time, just like we have Putin in Russia, well, you don't need to come out and say 95% voted for you. It's just absurd to even believe that or to think that. So, that's a place where, it's been abandoned by the West for many reasons because it was an endless war, but you still have so many victims that stay behind, like these children, like the families, like the Kurds, and many others who are there and fighting for their lives. So, it's really one of the other endless wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria being 3 really in the Middle East.
Now, Lisa, speaking of victims, the death toll from the flooding in Germany and Belgium is closing in on 200, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who toured the flood-ravaged areas, called what she saw simply terrifying.
Yeah, this is really, really horrific. You look at the flooding around the world, you don't see numbers like this. 200 to die just from a flooding where there are, warnings that come ahead of time, and these people were not able to get out of harm's way. It's devastating. I know that they're getting help from around the world. Many sending, whether it's humanitarian aid, money, or actual physical help, and we wish them well in really recovering from this, and the families who've lost loved ones. It's senseless death, and really upsetting to watch. I mean, Mother Nature can be really violent and harsh at times.
Absolutely. And in business news, Google has parted ways with an executive following a LinkedIn blog where he posted in June that he confessed to being anti-Semitic in his past. Amr Awadallah was a VP of Developer Relations for Google Cloud. Lisa, this is the second time in 2 months Google has dismissed employees due to an anti-Semitic past.
Yeah, there's so many takeaways from this story, right, Hal? You can say there are many more anti-Semites than we thought. And 2, Google does not hire the smartest people in the business as they claim to. It seems to be the most competitive place to get a job. The most, coveted jobs are at Google, but yet we see these people are actually stupid for putting that kind of hate online. And then, you really think about it and you think, well, if these people have such, high profile jobs, and they're posting that kind of material online, then they really must feel so passionately about it in order to post it and to risk their jobs and to risk their reputations. Or maybe they think that there is no punishment for anti-Semitism, as many people think, that it's just a free pass where you can talk about Jews as much as you'd like because, others will agree with you, or it's just going to be taken, with a grain of salt, or it'll be, just overlooked. But I'm very happy that Google and others, BBC being another company, that recently fired an individual because I've heard tweets about Jews. You have doctors and nurses tweeting that they would actually use their powers to kill Jews. I hope they are all removed. I mean, think about the extent of this, and replace Jews with any other race or creed or culture or religion. And it sounds awful. It sounds awful with any person of any background. So we don't like to see that kind of hate, and we're very happy that Google actually took a stand against this employee.
U.S. correspondent and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, thanks a lot for your time today.
My pleasure.
The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all of us, from our health to job losses. It's also impacted many of our homeless population. To talk about some of the challenges of our homeless, the working poor, and those with serious addictions is Ken Kissick. He's the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission here in Lethbridge. Ken, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you share a little bit about how the street population has responded to the pandemic and how they fared so far here in our city?
the pandemic has been hard on our street population, not so much from the point of view of the actual disease of COVID. Um, a lot of them have managed to get through that without too much difficulty, but it's the closing of a lot of services and things that they were used to accessing, the library, the provincial building. Um, and it created a real problem in them being able to get into certain places or through the winter. A lot of stores and places were closed, so it was cold. Here through the heat wave, now that we're just opening, it was difficulty to find places for them to be able to get in. All their normal things were lost. And so there was a group of us. Streets Alive became a warming center. It became a cooling center. Right now, in the midst of all the smoke and everything else, people are able to come in, get out from the air quality. Kind of the upside of having a bunch of masks around is now the masks are advantageous during the smoke. But it's been hard on them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't breathe in a lot of that particulate matter, when it comes to the smoke. You're right, the poor air quality. Ken, have you noticed an increase in the homeless population or maybe in the number of addictions because of the pandemic with people losing their jobs?
The other thing that we certainly have noticed is in the area of addictions. The drug use, the number of cases that we deal with in terms of overdoses has certainly gone up. Now there was a kind of a combination of the fact that the one site, the supervised consumption site, was shut down, which created some problems. But the other has been the lack of actually the pure drugs because the borders closed. There's been a lot of dirty drugs that have shown up, and it's created a problem. We have seen haven't seen that much of an increase in the homeless population because of job loss, but there's always the transient population, and our homeless population is becoming more significant as the city itself grows. One of the upsides that's been here because of COVID is the Blood Tribe Band has done an excellent job of really stepping up, looking to help their people. And they opened 2 shelters out on the reserve through the winter months. They have a much better addictions and healthcare system. So we're trying to move people to them, but we still have a population of people here in the community that are struggling with addictions and drugs, alcohol that create the problems that put them on the street.
Ken, does your ministry work with the Sage Clan as well? I know they're out helping a lot of the homeless, with water bottles and such. Do you work with that organization as well?
Yeah, actually, one of the greatest things that happened through COVID was the creation originally of the City of Lethbridge COVID response group. We used a communication item called Slack, and we created this group. Streets Alive was asked by the city to lead the addictions and recovery pod and the outreach and basic needs pods. But what has happened is that is now called Lethbridge Helping Organizations, and we have really banded together. So as an example, going into the summer, we knew we were going to need water. The 2 food banks led that up and reached out. Instead of a bunch of us kind of reaching out, we have close to 40,000 bottles of water available. And so organizations like the Sage Clan, the helping agencies, My City Care that has their outreach to the prostitutes, everybody was able to access that water. It's been great. This is the first year that we've actually been proactive rather than reactive. And yes, we work with the Sage Clan. We're working with the group that is transporting people out to the reserve. Any way we can help that population, we're working with groups.
So it sounds like you've got a good handle on the water situation. What about other supplies the ministry may need, including maybe masks, especially right now during the smoky conditions?
Again, because we were declared an essential service at the beginning of this, we were able to access PPE through the government. And they've been pushing out the supplies, the oversupply they have, and so we're well stocked, courtesy of the government.
Now, can you give us an update on the Segway home? I know it was a little controversial when it was set up on the city's south side, but it seems to be making a big difference in the lives of women who are in need of a safe place.
Actually, the Segway home is been open since December 3rd. It's been a bit of a learning curve because we were moving from managing 4 women to now up to as many as 17. Currently have 9. But yes, it's making a huge difference in the ability for us to be able to help women in recovery. As well, our men's program has grown. We've acquired another housing unit that houses 16 men in our stage 2 recovery. And so both our men's and women's recovery program are in growth mode right now.
So Ken, talk to me a little bit more about the Exodus Men's Life Recovery Program. Really explain the impact it's having on men in our region here.
Well, so again, one of the things that Streets Alive has been involved in for almost 30 years is helping people recover from addictions. And we've been doing men's programming for 22 years, and we've been doing women's for 10. And we have been enhancing these programs over the last few years. In fact, we are currently actually developing, in the last stages of developing our what we call our addictions recovery psychology portion of that, so that we can actually get accredited, not so much as a treatment center, but as an in-depth recovery center for both the men and the women. We've been excited about our men. We currently have the ability to have 35 men in our program. We currently have about 21. We just graduated our 8th man into who has spent 1 year sobriety, and so that's very exciting for us. We've probably had well over 40 90-day celebrations of guys that have got through 90 days, and so this makes a big difference for a lot of the men in recovery, as well as the women. Our whole purpose is to help them recover, to grow, and to be able to come back into a productive lifestyle. We are faith-based, so a lot of our programming and direction has the biblical worldview edge to it. That people can enter. Faith is not an issue for entry. Most of them, however, when they leave, are people of faith. Because without Christ, we are unable to really totally recover. And it's been really exciting to watch men and women, when they let Christ in, actually move forward in huge leaps. But it's a bit of a walk to get them to that place.
So Ken, what do you say to people who are approached by someone who's homeless, maybe has an addiction issue? Should we send them to you, Streets Alive? How do we handle a situation like that to really help our most vulnerable here in our city?
Right now, if somebody runs across someone who is actively, let's say, using, okay, and they're struggling and they need to go somewhere, they need to send them to Alpha House, which is Alpha House runs not only the emergency shelter, but it also runs the stabilization and detox unit. And they have a system to be able to move them through that. If they are individuals who don't appear to be using, they're just looking, they want to get into recovery, they need a better place, they can certainly be sent to us. But we work hand in hand with Alpha House, with Fresh Start, Community Recovery Center, that's the old the South Country Treatment Center, and we exchange people back and forth with the idea to get them through into full recovery.
Ken, let's talk about some success stories of people who've maybe gone through your program, came to know Christ, and are now leading a clean, sober life.
Well, I can talk about, I won't use his real name. We'll call him Brian. Brian came to us about 15 months ago, full-blown meth addict. And this was his first time in any kind of treatment or recovery. He was very apprehensive about the faith base. He was not a believer. He didn't believe in God or anything else. About 2 months into the program, he recognized that he needed greater help. He received Christ, and his life dramatically turned. Currently, that Brian is working with us. He's employed by us. He is part of our men's recovery team. He is an assistant, what we call a client assistant. He has regained visitation rights to his daughters. He is establishing himself within the community, fully productive. And he's just one of 5 men that have gone through that, because one of the other things that we do with the men program and the women's program, when they reach a certain point, stage 3, we try and employ them for a period of time, 90-day cycles, which gives them both sobriety and an employment as they reach out. Because a lot of these guys have been out of work for years, and so they need that help.
That's tremendous. Let's talk about maybe help that you may need in the form of more volunteers. How are you doing in that aspect?
The volunteers that we need, because we've made some changes that have just happened in the community, but we still need volunteers with what we're calling our repurpose centers. So that's a new enterprise that also started during COVID, but it's basically sorting through clothing and furniture and stuff like that. We still need some volunteers to make sandwiches, because we are doing a certain amount of help for Alpha House and different places where we're providing sandwiches. And we could use some volunteers just in our pin bank downstairs at the mission. So there's lots of opportunity, and they can just go to our website, go to volunteers, and fill out the application.
Now, Ken, a big part of helping to turn people's lives around is providing a solid education. Tell me a bit more about the Ask Learning Center. What is it all about? So the Ask Learning Center has now been converted into what we call Genesis Connect for Women. Okay, and it's located, we have a separate location from the mission. It is a place where the women who are in the program come. That's where the classes are held. It's also where they do what we call DIY. So there's a creative element to do them. So they do arts, they do glass work, they make certain things, journals and everything else. Those items are then put up for sale at the front end of that building. Now, of course, COVID shut us down for almost well over a year and a bit, but we're hoping to get reopened here by the end of summer, where people will be able to come in, purchase the items that have been made by the women, and then it just helps to run the program. On top of that, again, the men and women we've increased our addictions recovery scope. And so that there's classes that happen there. There's, things that go after what we call the trauma, led by, specialized people. We provide counseling assistance to them. But the Genesis Connect Center is strictly for women. The men's center is actually located in the Repurpose Center. So both have places where they gather, where they're able to come together and enjoy one another. That was one of the biggest pluses during COVID. Because we were declared an emergency or an essential service, and recovery was essential, the group limitations didn't apply to our groups. And so they were able to maintain a semblance of community. And so their mental health is a little bit better than others that we've seen. Now, we only have about a moment left here, Ken. Quickly tell us about this fundraising golf tournament you have coming up July 23rd.
Oh, yeah. We're excited about our golf tournament. This is one of our major fundraisers for our Exodus Men program. I believe we have a few spots left, teams to come in. It's all about fun. We have 8 or 9 different games you'll play as you come around. We have great prizes. Because COVID restrictions are lifted, there's going to be a steak dinner at the end. And so if you just want, go to the website, type in golf and it'll come up, register, and we'd love to have you. The weather's supposed to be great. There's some challenges. And like I said, there's some good prizes, 50-inch TVs, some golfing equipment. Everybody's going to get a jacket with our logos, so we're excited.
Ken Kissick is the co-founder of Streets Alive Mission here in Lethbridge. Ken, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, and may you have a great day.
You as well. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks so much for watching.